You right? Are you mic'd up?
Yeah, I'm good.
Alright, get your clicker.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for the intro. How do you know we're good blokes?
We don't know, do we?
Are we doing both?
Yeah,
We've got
that's-
handheld and...
Yeah.
Oh, that's for the... All right, do you want to start the timer?
I forgot the phone.
What was wrong with these seats up here?
Yeah. You blokes at the back want to listen to this?
Were there more people here earlier or what?
They knew we were coming.
They got the professional development done and decided to fuck off, did they? All right, are we waiting on anyone else or are we good to go? Awesome. All right, well, thanks very much for having us here today, guys. It's always a pleasure to come out to industry events like this and be able to share our story. I think the best way to spread the message about what we do is to be able to get in front of crowds like this and for then you guys to go and take that message and keep it going. So just as a quick introduction, my name's Dan Allen and this is Ed Ross, and we're both the co-founders of two organisations, Trade Mutt, which is a social impact workwear company, and we also co-founded TAX, which is a free counselling service for tradies, truckies, farmers and blue-collar workers. But just quickly before we start, we always like to kind of get to know each other a little bit in the room. So quick show of hands here. I don't know, let's say, quick show of hands if you're an electrician. Yeah, I can fucking tell by how clean you all are. And all the fancy utes parked outside too. Righto, now that's done, that's my joke done. What now? Righto, so quick background to us, so we've only got half an hour, so we did one yesterday down at Logan City Council, it was about 45 minutes. So this is the same prezzo, so we might have to skip through a few slides just to keep the pace up, but we'll see how we go, so stay with us. So myself and Ed are two carpenters by trade, the king of the trades, they're just going to keep coming, so get used to it. There you go. That's a fucking good point. Don't clean up after yourselves today, guys. We've got staff here to do it. Not that you'd think about cleaning up after yourselves anyway. Should we just do this for a little while? So myself and Ed met on a building site back in 2015. I was a few years out of my trade and Ed was just starting out his mature age apprenticeship. I'm originally from Sydney and Ed comes from Longreach. There probably wasn't too many reasons why we would have crossed paths, but you know, thankfully we ended up working for a builder on the same day together, and they lumped the two newbies together, and we were off and racing. Ed was fresh off a stint wrangling cattle and chasing women in central West Queensland, and and I was just, as I said, a few years out of my apprenticeship, and I was lucky enough to get lumped with this bloke. And there wouldn't have been too many reasons why we connected, but it really was our sense of humour, I think, that bonded us together on the site. And I mean, as we all know, a building site is a great place to talk shit with your mates, and it's sometimes where some of the world's hardest problems are solved. And we certainly worked on that ourselves, and you know, we'd always talk about different things when we were on site together, you know, all sorts of nonsense. One of the things we talked about though was why has no one ever changed high-vis workwear? Like, why has high-vis workwear just never changed? And that was just that. That was nothing that we ever, you know, considered going into. It was just a conversation that we'd had. I'll never forget though a particular day when we were working together on a job site out in Kenmore. We were doing a new build out there. Oh no, we were doing a little reno out there, and I was standing up on top of a ladder, and Ed was on the ground cutting cement sheets and handing them up to me when my phone rang. And on the other end of the phone, it was my mate Dan. Ed could hear him coming through the phone on the ground. He was just full of elation. "You'll never believe it," he said. He goes, "I've just landed a mature age carpentry apprenticeship. Start Monday. Finally, things are happening." Now, I was stoked for Dan to hear that because he'd been looking for an opportunity like that for some time. So yeah, I was stoked to hear that, you know, things were finally on the up for him. The reason why I'll never forget that day is because 3 days later on a Sunday morning, I received another phone call that I'll never forget. And it was that Dan had taken his life the night before. And that was my first experience with suicide, and I was flattened. I was completely floored by it. I don't think anything can ever prepare you for that kind of news, and nothing can prepare you for the roller coaster of emotions that you experience in the days, weeks and months that follow. I was supposed to be this guy's tradie, And he's kind of the one there supporting me when I'm rocking up to site in the days that followed, bawling my eyes out. For a bloke who's still trying to figure out the difference between a left and a right-handed screwdriver, that's a fairly fucking tough task. We used to talk about the mental health space after that. We'd have these conversations, and we had one key observation, I think, that kind of stuck with us. And it was that the conversation around mental health seemed too serious, too stale, too scary, too, unapproachable. We kind of figured, well, it's kind of is there any wonder that people aren't really talking about mental health on a daily basis when things like depression, anxiety, suicide, these kinds of things are painted in, such a heavy, dark light. Now, obviously, this is a heavy subject, and it, can have, really, really heavy, drastic outcomes. But we kind of saw a real need to help chill out the conversation, make it a bit more approachable. That's when we kind of came up with this idea for Trade Mutt. So at the time, Ed and I were working 7 days a week. We were working for a builder together, then we'd knock off, on weekdays, and we'd go and do cashies at night. We'd do cashies on Saturdays and Sundays while all the rest of our mates were out getting up at proper. We were getting up at 5 o'clock on a Sunday morning and going and earning cash. There's obviously no one from the ATO in this room, is there? I'm assuming. AC Solar doesn't invite the tax man to these events, do they? Sweet, we're all familiar with cash jobs then. So this is a completely illegitimate business. So we kind of had our heads together, and we had this sort of this awakening around the mental health space, and we started to explore this idea of workwear. We wanted to make some funky workwear, and along that journey we learned about social enterprise and using profit for purpose. This was not a model or a style of business that we were familiar with. We'd never really heard of it. Given what had happened with my mate, the impact on the mental health space, for us, we thought that if we were going to go ahead and try to design some funky workwear, maybe we could use that workwear for good and try to start some positive conversations on site, bring a bit of colour to an otherwise fairly dark topic. We had $30,000 cash. We spent we bought our first 1,500 work shirts. We bought 2 computers, and we were sort of off and racing. We burnt the boats, so to speak, and look, we'd certainly had some fairly funny conversations on site with the boys that we were working with when we're kind of trying to explain to them that we're spending all the money in the world that we've got to make some colourful work shirts to start a conversation about mental health. Talk about mental health, they thought we were fucking crazy. We'll fly through these because this is really where we were at in the early days of design. Like this is the result of sitting on my back deck with an expensive packet of pencils, a couple of 6-packs and some blank sheets of paper in the shape of shirts. So they look probably more like, Melbourne Cup jockey winning silks, but, whatever, that's where we're at. We're better at colouring in between the lines these days. This design here, right, this chicken pox inspired polka dots, when we got it digitised for the first time, we thought we'd fucking done it. We saw that and we were like, oh, job done, this business is made, here we go. Obviously it's a hideous shirt and we would never make something like that, but we had to start somewhere. So that is the first ever Trade Mutt shirt that was ever made. It's obviously trash, like it's rubbish, right? But we thought we had to get something down, get something made, because our biggest fear was that we'd make these shirts and all the ink and the dye would leak into people's washing machines and fuck all their clothes up. So Ed wore that shirt to work every day. Every single day he'd wear it, cover it in shit, take it home, he'd wash it, dry it, wear it again the next day, to the point where he became known as the bloke that was wearing the weird polka dot shirt. Eventually people are asking, mate, what the fuck is with the shirt? And he's there proudly going, oh, it's to start a conversation about mental health, They're like, all right, mate, sweet. Luckily, we employed some designers and, we kind of navigated our way through that space. And as I said, we got our first 1,500 shirts made. And look, it was kind of crazy because when we got our first 2 shirts back from our manufacturer, our first 2 samples, Ed and I wore them out to our weekly shareholders meeting on a Thursday afternoon down at the Newstead Brewery. And we wore the shirts inside, and 6 different people came up to us that day and wore our first samples. And they were like, wow, what's with the shirts? Are you guys on a Bucks party? What's to go here? Rah, rah. We'd tell them the story and everyone was like, geez, that's great, you know. Starting conversation about mental health, you know, nice innovative idea, it's really cool. Ed and I were sort of looking at each other going, fucking hell, they work. Like, we were shocked, you know. Obviously we intended for them to start conversations, but we really didn't realise, you know, just how much of an impact they would have. And the last bloke who came up to us in the pub that day was an editor for a little magazine called Quest Magazine. I think it's a little rag in the Courier Mail. And he said, oh, this is really cool, I'd love to do a story on you. And we kind of said, all right, mate, no worries. Your career on the line if this goes tits up, so let's go. So we went down to the park, we did a photo shoot, he did the story on us, and somehow Channel 7 got a hold of that story before it went to print. They called Ed that day, Channel 7. We would love to put you on the news. Great, when? Tonight. Fuck, righto. So we both knocked off that day and went and got our shirts and made sure they were ironed. We literally only had 2 in the country at this stage, so we had to treat them like gold. They put us on the news. To this day, we still look back at that and think we look like the 2 biggest dickheads that have ever been on TV, but I think everyone thinks that about themselves when they see them on the screen. And that was it. That was the launch of Trade Mutt, 15th of March 2018. As I said, $30,000 on 1,500 work shirts and 2 computers, and we were cash flow positive in 5 days. We didn't have any shirts in the country at that stage, so we had to navigate the whole, you know, we got all these shirts in production and, you know, we've got customers to manage, and it just got really real for us very fucking quickly. And things have just snowballed from there. It's kind of been chaos ever since. Now, the idea of wearing a Trade Mutt shirt is fairly simple. Initially, the idea was I put this shirt on, Ed puts that shirt on, and he sends a message to everyone in this room that he's up for a yarn. He's okay to have a conversation. He's up for a tough conversation if it's needed, and he'll always act with empathy, show compassion, and take a non-judgmental approach to any conversation that we end up in. Because you just never know what someone's dealing with in their own life. You never know exactly what they're dealing with when they go home every day, but you can guarantee, and I can guarantee that every single person in this room right now is dealing with stuff outside of here today, but you'll never know. So taking that non-judgmental approach is really key to what we do. Obviously, they're meant to be loud to attract attention and start conversations. A few features on the shirt, YNWA. I don't know if anyone here, I know we're in rugby league territory, but if anyone is familiar with English Premier League football, my mate Dan, who took his life as a die-hard Liverpool Football Club supporter, that club's motto and its song, sung before every home game in a full-throated chorus, is "You'll never walk alone." If you're not familiar with it, check it out on YouTube because it'll put the hairs on the back of your neck standing up. But there's a little tribute to Dan, but also a message to anyone who joins the Trade Mutt community that we're building a community within which you'll never walk alone. And the QR code under our pockets, because you have to sign in before wearing our shirts. We've built a fairly engaged community. We've got people with tattoos of our shit, right? Like, that's crazy. I've never seen anyone with like an Adidas tattoo, but like, that's pretty cool. So, you know.
There'd be one in Mount Druitt or something, surely.
Yeah, and no one with a Trade Mutt tattoo is weird either, so don't go thinking that. So like I said, the idea of putting the shirt on was to send that message to everyone else, but then this happened. Like, this is a fella in the high-vis shirt there, his name's Lan, he's a Kiwi dude. Don't hold that against him. Initially I bought some shirts because I wanted to support the cause, but I've found that wearing them has actually helped me too. I generally don't like attention, I'm not a fan of groups of people, and I'd rather hang out quietly in the background and do my own thing. But there's no hiding while rocking one of these bad boys. I can feel the looks when I'm in public, on and off site, but I no longer care. I own it, I lift my chin and I strut. Maybe it's not that dramatic, but it feels like it to me. I feel my own anxieties fade and I have a newfound confidence in myself, and I very much like that. That was an unintended outcome of starting Trade Mutt. We never realised that people would embrace wearing these shirts to take ownership of their own mental health journey and start to be more vocal about that in their own communities. So that for us was a really, really cool thing that happened. Now, Funky Shirt Fridays has become a ritual. We didn't start it, the community started it, and we kind of adopted it, and now we promote it through businesses who get on board with Trade Mutt. But this is the easiest way to get on board. If you've got a business, if you've got a team of, you know, a crew or whoever who want to jump on board, Funky Shirt Fridays, I mean, Friday's obviously just the best day of the week. But it's a great day, things are a bit more chilled out, get that funky shirt on, start some conversations and send a positive message.
That's when I come in. Right. How are we going for time? Yes, sweet. All right, awesome. Yeah, so the big thing for us being a social impact business was we had to contribute funds or profits that we're making through TradeMutt into change in the social change that we're trying to make, which is obviously mental health. We looked at the landscape, like Dan was saying, and a lot of the stuff out there was really crisis support and awareness. And obviously we were raising plenty of awareness with our work shirts and people all around the country donning them on a Friday or any other day of the week. And the conversations that we were having with people were, where do I go next? When I have a conversation with someone and I can't help them, where do they go? And that was a question that Dan and I struggled to answer ourselves. And when we needed to go and speak to a mental health professional, we didn't know where to go to either. And we realised that getting on a mental health plan was an arduous task. You had to book in an appointment with your GP, attend that appointment, get on a mental health plan, then find a counsellor or a practitioner somewhere available, book in and go. So there's all these barriers to entry, and obviously it can be quite expensive as well. So what we wanted to do was just remove all those physical and financial barriers that had previously existed for people to access private sector mental health support instantaneously and also ongoing. So we launched TAX. And our vision for TAX is to be the counselling service that you tell your mates about. So we launched TAX on the 8th of June 2020. Our first caller was a guy here in Brizzy. He was on a scaffold. He was having a really tough time at work. He was having a tough time with his relationship with his wife at home. And he just didn't know who to talk to. And amazingly enough, we'd launched that service that week and we'd put some social media posts out and a mate of his at work said, why don't you give TAX a call? And from there, the charity was born as the mental health service that you tell your mates about. So Dan and I obviously come from a residential carpentry background. EAP services was not something that we had access to as two resis. So us being able to provide this for everyone in the blue collar community is something that we're immensely proud of. So as Dan was saying, we've got a QR code underneath the left breast pocket of all of our work shirts. It's just an easier way when you're having that conversation, just lift the flap, scan away and have a chat with one of our clinicians right away, book in, and you speak with that same counsellor through your journey. So you're not repeating your story over and over again, which is something that's really important to us. So with TradeMutt, the impact that we as a business have been able to make through providing 50% of our profits to TAX, we've been able to support over 4,000 clients, nearly 3,000 hours of conversation and almost $700,000 worth of free counselling in sort of 2.5 years, which is something we're incredibly proud of. TAX as a whole, over 16,000 we've had through now. We've developed a relationship with one of the guys from Suncorp Stadium, and Dan and I weirdly often talk about volumes of people in Suncorp stadiums, and 16,000 is pretty much one whole side of Suncorp Stadium field that we've had through now, which is something that's like unreal to visualise, and we can't believe we've had that many people through, which is really, really cool. We've also had nearly $2.5 million worth of services provided, which is amazing.
And we know people who go to Suncorp Stadium need all the help they can get.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. So the biggest thing is that the people that are sadly taking their lives the most are men aged 14 to 44, and we don't really ever talk about those statistics, but the reason we do now is that we are actually getting to the men of that age bracket. So of a percentage, 75% of our callers are male, which is awesome, and then we're really picking up that meaty sort of 26 to 40 year olds. So as I'm sure most people in this room know, that's really that development stage where you've finished your apprenticeship, you're either starting your own business or you're starting to subby, you're bringing on some financial pressures, you may be in a bit more of a committed relationship, you may be getting married, having kids. There's all of those things being thrown at you as as a young male, and it can be hard to deal with. I know Dan and I, we're both on our own mental health plans, and we talk about that quite openly because we want people to understand that we all go through struggles, and we're very open about getting support ourselves because it's life can be very hard to navigate. So it's great to see that those blokes of those age groups are reaching out, and about relationships, anxiety and depression are sort of the main reasons people are calling us as well.
And I'll just quickly jump in. Look, we've got a team of 12 counsellors. We've got 12 counsellors. They're over at an office in Toowong providing free counselling Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And those counsellors are trained to collect de-identified information and data from people who use TAX just along the way, because obviously this kind of data is key. You can't always extract all that information, because obviously when you're dealing with people in a sensitive state of, frame of mind, you can't extract all that information. So that's not people being unsure how old they are, that's just incomplete surveys there. So
that's a good pickup.
Yeah. Well, electricians are smart, they've been looking up there.
Yeah, of course. Like, you don't have to do that with the concreters. So nationally, obviously we're getting coverage nationally. We're so pumped that we're getting cut through right across the country, which is awesome. We can't quite work out how the one at the top there near Weeper got through. They're either bogged going to Cape York or something, and misdialed us or some shit. We're not quite sure how that came through, but we're pretty pumped about that one because we didn't think there'd be service that high in the country. But yeah, getting coverage all across Australia, which is great. When Dan's just been in Thailand for 3 weeks, that's why he looks a bit run out. But when I was chatting to Sue and the team from TX, I just asked them what is some of the feedback that we've been getting through to the counsellors, recently, and these were 3 that sort of stuck out. So every other service has told me that I'm too complex with my trauma background and tried to refer me somewhere else. You're the first person to actually listen and understand and advocate for me. Thank you for what you guys do. I'm telling all my friends about TX now. I was looking forward to speaking with you. Our time on the phone has shown me the importance of speaking to a counsellor and how important it is for my mental health. And then finally, it's been really productive for me to call you and chat with you today about all the changes with my wife and my son. It's been so tough. I felt so alone, and I'm glad that I've decided to call you guys today to have a yarn about everything that's been happening to me, which is, amazing feedback. So the big thing with charity is people always want to know, where does the money go? Well, 78 cents on the dollar goes directly into our clinical team, so the counsellors that are providing that service to the community. So for Dan and I, we're obviously driven by outcomes. That's what the data shows, and that's what we want to keep continuing to share with the community. So 78 cents on the dollar goes directly into the team that are providing that care for free, which is something that we're stoked about. So this number, I know everyone's getting a shirt this afternoon, which is awesome, and you'll have the QR code, but we really recommend putting this number in your phone. We recommend putting it in your phone and then giving the team either a text or a call. Do it today, do it next week, whenever you're ready. And we want you to do that so you understand how the service works. So when you're talking to someone on site, or you're having a shit day in 6 months and you don't know who to talk to, you've got that number there ready to go. And when you're talking to that person on site that you think may be struggling, you can then say, hey look, I've given this service a call, they're fantastic, comparative to, I heard Dan and Ed talk and they've got this service, maybe you should give those guys a try. So being able to show that vulnerability, take that first step yourself, understand how that service works, and then spread that message, tell your mates about it, is how we're going to continue to get more people through the service and get access to that care that they desperately need.
Cool. That's the same QR code that's under our pocket flap, so
same.
I don't think we need that. So, so just a couple of quick stories to finish on. So I mentioned yesterday we went to Logan City Council and we did this yarn. And the key, Ed mentioned vulnerability a number of times, but that's the common theme that comes through our entire organisation. Our MO is to, encourage people to show a little bit more vulnerability and have some conversations they wouldn't otherwise have. And after our yarn yesterday at Logan City Council, there's always one person, and it might happen again today. But there was a 63-year-old bloke who came up to us after yesterday's event, and you can just tell, when they come up, you can see the tears welling up in the eyes. You're about to be in for a tough conversation. And yesterday was no different. It used to be tough for us, but we've got a lot better at handling those conversations. We know we can't take everyone's shit on board, but when someone wants to open up, you've got to give them that time and respect and let them go. And yesterday, this 63-year-old bloke opened up to us about when I was talking about my mate Dan and how everything was on the up. He just jagged that mature age carpentry apprenticeship and then he went and jumped off a bridge. And there's nothing that can ever answer that question as to why that happened. And the same thing was for this bloke yesterday. He had a mate who did the same thing 25 years ago and he's never spoken to anyone about it. And yesterday was the first time in 25 years that fella came up and he let that pressure valve off. And you can tell, when you're standing there and there's a bloke choking back tears and he's struggling to get his words out, mate, it's giving me goosebumps just thinking about it right now. And if we can make a positive impact on just one person in a room, well then that's the job done. but that's the power of vulnerability. That's the power of making an invisible issue impossible to ignore. And that's the power of continuing to encourage this much needed social and cultural shift. And so there's a thing I wanted to share just quickly now, which I've got to get my phone out for, because this is fucking cool. It's something I saw yesterday. And it involves a bloke in this room who shall remain unnamed. But there's a fella in this room today who came in our podcast maybe 2 years ago, must have been, to talk a bit of shit. We don't do the podcast currently anymore because we've got too much shit going on. We'll get it back up and started again. But yeah, we did have a Sparky from this room come on our podcast, and he shared some pretty vulnerable and open stuff about challenges that he'd been through in business, some pretty severe challenges, financial challenges, challenges with the family, all this kind of stuff. And he spoke openly on that podcast about it. Now there's another fella who I don't know who's listened to that podcast and been inspired by that guy in this room. And they've been working together a little bit. And the bloke who heard this guy's story has been through his own journey, and he's come out the other side now too. And so I just want to read this post and let you have a think about it. Today, David came to visit me at work with a present and a nice bottle of single malt whiskey, which we will have to get stuck into when the Bronx play the Panthers. Hope that doesn't give it away. I was really taken back and probably a bit awkward when receiving these gifts. Dave gave me these gifts to say thanks for the impact I have had on him over the last 2.5 years. And it's just felt like talking to a mate for me, but been super helpful to him. It just goes to show, no matter where you are in life, offering a bit of helpful advice or telling your story can have a really positive effect on others. I don't think I have much to offer most of the time, but clearly I do. Dave listened to a podcast I did with Trade Mutt in 2020, where I spoke about a few of the small changes I'd made in my life, like some cold showers, meditation, gym, routine, etc. At this time, Dave was basically bedridden after breaking both his ankles in a workplace accident. Hearing someone in the same industry as him talk about the things they were doing sparked Dave into a journey of getting out of the depression, sorry for himself hole, and into the mindset and growth space. Dave tracked down my email address and sent me an email a month or so later thanking me for the podcast and what he had learned from it. Dave became a member of the Man That Can project, then and not long after had some hardship within his business where a few of us in the group were able to put him in touch with the right people and offer some advice, which all helped Dave get his business out of trouble and heading in the right direction. My learnings from all of this are never underestimate your potential impact on others. And there is always someone to learn from you. You just have to put yourself in the right circle. Thanks so much for the gifts, Dave. Go the Panthers. Now that's a Sparky in this room, just like everyone else here, who shared his story and potentially saved a life. And that's the power of vulnerability, that right there. And that's what we're trying to encourage. There's one example of someone in this room who's done it and had a positive impact on his life. We have stories every day, and yesterday with that 63-year-old bloke was just another example of that. Our ask for everyone here is that we collectively cut the bullshit and start to show a little bit more vulnerability ourselves. There's no world that exists where we don't all go through shit. It's not a matter of if, but when. What we're trying to do here is create a closed circle approach where we're taking some funky workwear that's making a huge impact in the community. We're using that workwear to fund free counselling for anyone in the industry that needs it. And don't get free confused with shit, right? We have got fucking amazing counsellors, 12 of them. We don't just take anyone. We've got really awesome counsellors, and it's a free service. As Ed says, it'd be like rocking up to the gym every day and a personal trainer just taking you for a 1-hour session without having to pay for anything. It is there for you guys here. You don't have to be struggling with your own mental health to use it. You might have employees who are going through some stuff at the moment and you don't know how to help them. We've got a team of counsellors who are there to support you in supporting others. You might have a family member, you might have a mate, a loved one, anyone. You might not know how to help that person. Our counsellors are there for you. You might have never spoken to a counsellor or a mental health professional before in your life. As Ed says, we encourage everyone to text or call TX and just have a yarn, see who's on the other end of the phone. But do it while the going's good. If you can reach out to a counsellor while the going's good, it's 1,000 times easier to reach out to that same counsellor when shit hits the fan, and shit will hit the fan. So if we start to practice some good habits now, we can make a real difference. But seeing counsellor, that's just one small piece in a broader picture of looking after ourselves and creating a bit of difference in the space. So we've got a few hats to give away.
We do have free hats.
Yeah, we've got a few hats to give away. So we'll quickly give these away. I think we're going to leave time for some questions. I'm not sure if we've got time for questions, but we'll see how we go. So we'll quickly give these away and we'll see where we're at. This is just a show of hands and ask a few questions. Throw your hands up. You all know the answers. You get the hats. Which of the trades is notorious for never cleaning up after themselves? Right there.
Yes!
Okay. Hey.
No.
Next question. Which of the trades earns the most money? No, wrong. Up the back. Sparkies.
There you go, mate.
See, this is what vulnerability and taking ownership is about. Yeah. Righto. Third question. Which of the trades never gets dirty? Yes, you. Sparky.
Which one was it? Who was it? Yes.
White shirt.
There you go, mate.
Righto. YNWA. What does that stand for? Oh, mate.
Quick.
These guys are sharp here, I'll tell you.
Black shirts. Last one.
Righto. Final question. When's the right time to call TX? Now. Go on. Who said it?
Who said
up
it?
the back there. Yep. This lady. You put your hand up. Go on.
Which one? Oh, over there.
There
Yes.
you go.
Nice work.
Do we still have time for questions or nah?
I've got one question. What does TX stand for?
This is a conversation starter. We missed that part. The acronym
sorry.
for this
we
is
were
a
rushing through
conversation
it today. We only
starter.
had 30 minutes.
We had to move through and try and get the jokes done. Yes.
What the shirt's made out of and stuff?
Yeah, 100% cotton drill.
It's beautiful.
Yep.
155 GSM.
Any other questions?
Nice and light for those hot summer days.
Anyone else?
Which softener should we use?
Which what, sorry?
Which fabric softener should we use?
You don't need them, they're pre-washed.
But you look like a cuddly type of operator, so I'd go down that route.
You do look like a cuddly operator.
Yes.
Do the shirts need firmware upgrades?
No, they're fine. They're fine.
I'm actually surprised no one's asked if they're arc rated, but you've lost your fucking chance. Awesome. Righto. Well, look, TX is there for you guys to use. As I said, strongly recommend you guys reach out. It is absolutely there for everyone. So, and if you need some new workwear, some funky threads to keep the conversation going, obviously that keeps the lights on for us. So, love to thank the team from AC Solar for having us out here today.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate it, mate.
Is this a paid or unpaid gig?
This is just a gig.
Nah, thanks very much, guys. Really appreciate it. How do we go for time? Right on? Over? It's over? Righto.